I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone. If Steve Osborne, could you please come forward? It's like you're going to the principal's office, huh, Steve? Well, we wanted to bring you in and congratulate you and express our appreciation to you for all the service that you gave to our schools over the years and such a wonderful job that you did. And how long were you there?
9 years.
9 years. And you're moving on to different endeavors, and we appreciate all the service that you provided to us. And we have a proclamation I'd like to present to you and then hear from you about your thoughts. Whereas Stephen Osborne joined Dublin City Schools as its treasurer CFO in 2007, and whereas Steve's resume includes roles as treasurer of Chagrin Falls Exempted Village Schools, West Liberty Salem Schools, Norwalk City Schools, and private sector experience as a senior accountant with the Columbus Showcase Company and staff accountant with Resinald Engineering Corporation. And whereas Steve received his doctorate degree from the University of Akron, a Master's of Business Administration degree from the University of Dayton, and a Bachelor of Science degree from the Ohio Northern University, and whereas he is a certified public accountant and a member of the Ohio Society of Certified Public Accountants, the Ohio Association of School Business Officials, and the Ohio Government Finance Officers Association, and whereas Steve recently accepted a new position as faculty member at Otterbein University and will be leaving the district September 1st, 2016, and whereas under his leadership, the Dublin City Schools earned the highest possible credit rating from Standard & Poor's and implemented several successful cost-cutting initiatives, created an innovative staff wellness program, and repeatedly earned the Auditor of State Award for Distinction for clean and accurate financial reporting. And whereas his business management skills, public and private, financial background, collaborative style, and personal drive and commitment have served the Dublin City Schools and the Dublin community very well. Now, therefore, I, Gregory S. Peterson, Mayor of the City of Dublin, on behalf of Dublin City Council, do hereby congratulate Steve Osborne on his outstanding career as Treasurer and CFO for Dublin City Schools and wish him well in his new role at the Otterbein University.
There'll be prints available later for you, Steve. 5 extra print.
Well, I want to take a moment and thank you all tonight. It has been a terrific little over 9 years, and certainly the support of City Council has been just phenomenal and such a major piece of the successes that we've seen in our school district over that time. I can't begin to thank you. I can't begin to thank the Board of Education enough. They've been terrific bosses, and they are still my boss for another, till the end of the week anyway. And want to also thank city staff, working with Dana and working with Angel and Marcia before that. It's just, we do, as a collective community, so many good things, and it's done together. I mean, we've worked together, and you see the results here. So proud of this community. So I want to just thank all of you. Looking forward to the new challenges. Otterbein just started today, so I met with my first class today, and nobody from Dublin in the class today, but we will get there tomorrow, actually. So, but want to thank you. It's been a great ride, and I leave the district in great shape right now with a great new treasurer, Brian Kern, coming on board September 1, and he did work as our assistant for several years, so I know what I'm saying with that. He's a good guy, and will continue the fiscal excellence that we are used to and expect in our community. So thank you all very much.
Steve, I just want to say congratulations on your new position, but also it's been a pleasure working with you. Time flies, right? I mean, 9 years, I can't believe it. I remember a lunch, I thought it was early in your tenure with Councilmember Keenan. I forget what subject we were discussing, and I suspect maybe I was there in my role as a member of the Finance Committee, but in any event, it doesn't matter. You know, it was just always a pleasure working with you. Appreciate you know, all your service on behalf of the school district and the community. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Went quick. Yeah, and I do want to throw out a shout out to Cheryl Mack, my administrative assistant, who is here tonight also. Always going above the call of duty there. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve, for everything. Okay, if we could have Molly come forward with the Dublin Food Pantry and the representatives you brought with you. Welcome.
Thank you.
And we have a proclamation for you as well. Whereas hunger and poverty are issues of grave concern in the United States and the state of Ohio, where 16.8% of citizens deal with food insecurity on a daily basis, and the rate of food insecurity among children even higher at 23.8%. And whereas the City of Dublin is committed to taking steps to raise awareness about the need to combat hunger in every part of our state and to provide additional resources that citizens of Dublin need. And whereas the City of Dublin is committed to working with Mid-Ohio Food Bank and the Dublin Food Pantry to educate people about the role and importance of food banks in addressing hunger and raising awareness to the need to devote more resources and attention to hunger issues. And whereas the Mid-Ohio Food Bank distributes more than 59 million pounds of food and groceries in 2015 through its network of food pantries, soup kitchens, shelters, and other community organizations, and the Dublin Food Pantry distributes more than 262,000 pounds of food in 2015. And whereas the Dublin community is overwhelmingly in support and supports the assistance of the Dublin Food Pantry, including a most recent contribution in which close to 16,000 pounds of food were collected at the Dublin Irish Festival. That's amazing, 16,000 pounds of food just from the Irish Festival. And whereas food banks and partner agencies across the state, including Dublin Food Pantry, will continue in their efforts throughout the month of September to bring awareness and attention to end hunger in our community. Now, therefore, I, Gregory S. Peterson, Mayor of the City of Dublin, on behalf of all of Dublin City Council, do hereby proclaim September 2016 as Hunger Action Month in the City of Dublin. Encourage all citizens to take part in raising awareness by wearing orange attire on Go Orange Day, Thursday, September 8th, 2016, as a display of support. Maybe you could just let everybody know what it is that they can do to help support this month and participate in your efforts.
Absolutely. So, like we just said, this year's Irish Festival, our largest fundraiser of the year, we brought in just under 16,000 pounds in an hour and a half, and then had an amazing team of over 150 volunteers that had all of it moved from the site, sorted, date checked, boxed, and moved over to our storage facility in less than a 12-hour time period, which is amazing for us. So a huge undertaking. We really appreciate the council's support, the city's support, the community as a whole. So right now, our biggest needs are really going to be donations of toiletry items, bar soap, toothpaste, feminine hygiene products, things that are definitely of high need for our clients and something that isn't eligible to be purchased with food stamps. So that's a huge help to us. The continued support of the community gardens and anyone with a garden with overflow. We always love to have fresh produce for the clients as well. And if anyone's interested in volunteering, just let us know. We're always looking for people to come in, do tours, anything like that.
What's the best time to do either of those things, Molly? Either to drop off donations or to volunteer? How do people
So
volunteer?
donations can be dropped off at our location. We're on the first floor of the Dublin Community Church, and it's open 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. We have a scale if you're wanting to weigh everything. We'll send you a receipt for that. And then for volunteers, groups we can do pretty much any time if you're wanting to actually work with clients. Mondays and Thursdays in the evening and Tuesdays in the morning are when we have availability for that.
Great, thank you. Well, I've been into your facility. It's a wonderful, wonderful goal that you're satisfying for our community. So thank you very much for all your efforts.
Thank you.
Surely, please do.
First, I want to say thanks to Molly. She's been with us a little over a year, and just from that year, the food pantry has grown a lot. Tonight, I just came from there. We serviced almost 25 families tonight. So a lot of us are, don't need that help, but there is a lot of families in Dublin that need help. We're going to be continuing to grow our outreach this year. Dr. Hoadley is going to be on the board, so we're very excited about that. So we're looking to help more of the kids in the schools too. So one area, even though we're servicing a lot of families, we want to continue to grow that effort. So we want you guys to all help us get that word out. But I want to say thanks to Molly for all the help this year.
Great, thank you very much for everything you do. Appreciate it. Special presentation, Sarah?
Good evening, members of council. It's been some time since I've been here before you. I thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. This is an opportunity to provide you just a brief update about what's been happening with Washington Township here in 2015. One of the goals that we had this past year was to create some more transparency and community awareness about our services and the many programs that we provide beyond just emergency rescue and fire services. And one of the ways we've done that, as you've seen in the annual report that was in your packet, is moving towards the Government Accounting Association citizen-centric reporting model that really helps try to put things in a more transparent format. And I'd encourage you to check that out as a way to, we found very helpful to communicate our services to citizens. With me tonight is Fire Chief Alec O'Connell, that I believe all of you know, and I also wanted to take a moment to introduce Assistant Fire Chief Bill Lynn. Assistant Chief Lynn was recently promoted. We've kept the Assistant Fire Chief position vacant for a few years while we're allowing some growth in our organization, and he has been a tremendous asset to us just in these first few weeks as he's taken on his new responsibilities. The one question I deal with a lot is, where's Washington Township? Every Dublin resident is a Washington Township resident. There's some additional residents of Washington Township that are outside your jurisdiction, but by far, the 43,000 folks that you serve every day, we're serving as well alongside you. As you can see, we're the primary provider of fire EMS, and we work with a lot of other jurisdictions to provide the continuity of that service through mutual aid. This partnership that we've had with these other agencies and with the Dublin have really been the hallmark of trying to keep consistent services and service levels throughout our community. And we're fortunate of just how well everyone works together. And we applaud Dublin for that continued support, and we appreciate that as we go forward. We do stretch from the Glick Road corridor all the way down to Hayden Run. Folks sometimes don't realize that's all of our territory in between those areas that we provide quite a bit of services in. And as I mentioned, we're known for fire and EMS, but we also have a few other services we provide. We are responsible for zoning in the unincorporated areas of the township, as well as we have a small amount of roadways that we manage. Fire and EMS is busier than it's ever been. Just in the past year, we've had over an 8% increase in run volume, and over the 3 years, we're over a 15% increase in run volume. And that is something we expect we'll continue to see trending up. Most commonly, the calls are for emergency medical services. Usually that bounces somewhere between 70 and 75% per year. So we really are a EMS-centric department. That's not unusual around the country either in communities to have that trend. It has to do with safer building practices, with preventative approaches that property owners take, that we're fortunate that the risk of fire is reduced in our community, and that's shown through our ISO ratings here in the community. And as I mentioned, we do a lot more than just respond. We do a lot of safety education services with daycare groups, school groups, home schools, adoption processes. We work a lot with our businesses who are looking to improve their safety inside their operations. We run a Citizens Fire Academy. If any of you are interested, we're getting ready to start that, and it's either next week or the week after. We can save a slot for you if you want to try it out. It's only 6 weeks, but it's very hands-on. It's not classroom. So it's an opportunity to see what goes into providing our services day in and day out in Dublin. And there is a lot of things that folks really don't realize until you just happen to realize they're there. And so providing free car seat checks that support families throughout our community. We have a very close relationship with Dublin City Schools and a number of services that we provide to them to help make sure those facilities are as safe as they can be from our perspective, as well as we provide our community rooms to the community for their use. We treat our facilities as their facilities and trying to support those other activities that happen here. And then here with the City of Dublin specifically, we provide quite a bit of your training for CPR and first aid, working with you with commercial plans review. Thank you for your support of that recent joint funding of that operation. We also provide you an annual contribution towards parkland acquisition that comes from our general fund. And then we do purchase services from you. The good news is that providing all those services, residents say they like what we're doing, and that's what we want to always know. So having these satisfaction ratings have been helpful for us. It challenges us to keep them there, and that's what we're continuing to strive to. I think perhaps the biggest vote of confidence came last November when 77% of the community voted in favor of the renewal of the 8.25 mil fire levy. We're very appreciative of their support and of the members of the community who helped create awareness of the value of that levy. And it continues to provide by far the most funding for services in Washington Township. So to provide all those services, I just wanted to give you a quick look at where we were in terms of our revenues and expenditures last year. So we were a little bit below break even with our revenues being slightly higher. We were fortunate that that worked out for us. I will tell you, though, looking forward at 16, we anticipate that we will start deficit spending. That was an intentional decision by the board by going with a renewal levy to spend down fund balances within our 25% threshold. We think that we are able to do that fine through our next 5 years through diligent spending and management of our capital and our personnel costs. We've taken quite a few steps to keep that in check, with ultimately, though, we'll find at around 2020 that we will reach our 25% fund balance in both fire and general fund. The board also has set out some goals in 2016 that we've been working on that I think might be of interest to the council and the community. One of the things they've asked us to do is take a look at our fees for services. So looking at when we charge for classes, how are we calculating those fees? And also take a look at whether we should be involved in EMS transport billing. Up to this point, Washington Township has not done that. It's the only EMS agency in Franklin County that does not charge currently for that service. And it is a required coverage underneath your medical insurance policies. So the question of whether those funds should be secured by the township, and if so, in what manner, is currently a policy conversation going on within our agency and with the community. We're also taking a look at the impacts of tax increment financing. We have concerns about that. I've shared those with Dana and with Angel, and as well within our meetings with Mayor Peterson, that we think for the long term, we have some concerns about making sure that when those decisions are made, that there's some recognition of how that impacts the services of Washington Township going forward. We have also this year taken on a pretty significant employee compensation analysis. As part of that study that we implemented earlier this year, we froze wages for our employees. We felt like we could have some time to let the market get ahead of us further. And we felt like that was the most appropriate thing to do to keep our compensation competitive, but not in the forefront in the metro region. We are looking also at contracting out some zoning services. Right now, you're looking at the zoning person for Washington Township. Fortunately, it doesn't take most of my time, but we could probably deliver it in a more cost-effective way than my time, and we're looking at that. And lastly, as we continue to share services when cost-effective. You know, Dublin's been a great partner for us as we've taken a look at some things since I've come on board at the township in the past 2.5 years to say that there's some ways that we can save money for our shared residents. And we appreciate you willing to partner with us in making those come to fruition. That's all I have for you today, but I'd be happy to answer if you have any questions for me.
Council, any questions? Well, thank you very, very much, Sarah, for coming in. Obviously, we rely very heavily on our partnership with Washington Township. We look forward to it in the future. Thank you very much for your time. Okay, moving right along. Citizen comments. Jan Shepard. That's okay, you're good.
Okay, hi, I'm Jan Shepard, as you said, I live in Dublin, and the reason that I'm here today...
What's your address? We need to put your address down.
Oh, 8197 Ballock Court,
Thank you.
43017.
Okay.
And I'm here about the infamous roundabout. I know we're all here for our roundabouts because we want to avoid accidents, but my daughter spun around in one the other day, isn't working. The reason I wanted to come here is I feel and I empathize with the businesses and the people in Dublin that wanted it open so we could go the opposite direction in the roundabout. But I do feel it was open too early without proper signage and without consideration for the expanse of the size of the roundabout. My daughter in particular, she was in the inside lane of the roundabout going across on 161 when a gentleman failed to yield at all and came straight into her and spun her in the roundabout. He hit her that hard. So it wasn't a minor fender bender, knocked her wheel off. So my thought is when you come up to the roundabout, you know, my kids grew up, they know how to drive in the roundabout, but we put this at an intersection where we're going to funnel people to the Columbus Zoo, which is bringing people from all over outside our community. And I remember as a young driver, the first time in a rural community, I entered a roundabout. I freaked out. And I'm not saying for her, but I'm saying anybody that comes to that roundabout, they don't know what to do. And our signage is right at the entrance of the roundabout, and it's this big. So if you go to the roundabout, and I know the first time I approached the roundabout, I wasn't sure what to do. And since then, my daughter, at the same roundabout as she was coming through it, had somebody in the roundabout stop to wave her into it. She was waiting to go in, and the cars almost backed into them. So she's like, no, 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 you know, you go, you go. My husband the other day, the same roundabout, going around the roundabout, somebody in the wrong lane, just clips right across. I go that way to work every day down to our station, down at ABC and Fox. And I go down there. I called Mike Kilborn the day it happened, asked him what he thinks about it. He goes, I drive from Powell. I leave at 3:30 in the morning. You should see what it, you know, I don't want to go through the roundabout. So, and my point is, I understand we opened it, but get the signage right before we do it. That's the way we do things in Dublin. Priority should be our number one when we're speaking with Sandra you don't want to have somebody on the evening news talking about what happened and what we should have done. And I know some of our roundabouts were put in because of some fatalities. Some of our roundabouts are put in for ease of access. But I do feel at that particular roundabout, there has been 12 documented accidents that since it opened on the evening. And then also, I feel that we could very easily put some type of traffic calming in, such as even rumble strips, just to get people to understand you have to slow down. We go from 50 miles an hour to 35 miles an hour to 25 miles an hour. You're busy looking at these signs while you have these signs, while the marking is right there, also where a pedestrian crosswalk is. So you have a lot of things coming on, people that can dodge around the side in these roundabouts, and I just respectfully ask council to maybe take a second look at what we can do in the immediate term. Has anybody taken a speed gun out there to see how fast people are going through that and entering the roundabout? Not a traffic metering, but get one of our fine police officers out there with a speed gun and see how fast they're entering the roundabout. That was going to be my next thing to do, to contact my station to see if I could get one of my reporters to do that. Because I think if we did that, you would be amazed and appalled at the speeds, because I tried to catch up with one that clipped around me the other day. And I think as Dublin, our community is founded on doing things the right way and not under pressure and not reacting. So that's all. I just don't want to see one of these young people back here become a fatality. We need everybody in our community.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for coming in. We appreciate it. State Representative Dorothy Polanda?
Yes.
Please come forward. How are you this evening?
Fine, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Well, good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Dorothy Polanda, and I proudly represent the 86th District of Ohio, which includes most of Marion and all of Union. And in that regard, I represent Dublin 1 and Dublin 2, as well as Jerome Village. And I just think it's important for you to have a name with a face, and so that you also have contact information about how to get in touch with me. You know, 2 days a week, I go door to door in Dublin 1, Dublin 2, and Jerome Village. It's one of the fastest growing communities in the state of Ohio. And I think the most important thing that I can do as their state representative is to introduce myself to them so that they know who I am and what kind of services I can provide for them. I also have met with Dana and Donna
and Dr. Hoadley in an effort to build relationships on behalf of my constituents. Attending the Industrial Parkway Association meetings every month, I know that we have a lot of issues with regard to our Jerome Township residents and the city of Dublin. And it's my goal to be one of the bridges towards the growth that we're going to see, both on the 33 corridor as well as in the community itself. Prior to my being appointed as a legislator in 2011, I was a lawyer in this area for 30 years. And very shortly after becoming a legislator, I realized I could either be a good lawyer or a good legislator, but not both. So very shortly after that, I closed my practice so I could devote myself fully to representing my constituents in this area. I'm very proud of this district, very excited about the growth that I see, and I look forward to working with you on City Council to build those relationships so that as the challenges of growth arise, we can meet them together in a very positive way. So if there are any questions that any of you have of me or about our district, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Council questions? Well, thank you very much for coming, and thank you for your service to our community. We appreciate it very much. Good luck to you.
Greg, sorry, could I take a step back? Could we get, from the previous gal that spoke, could we get the data on the roundabout of accidents that have happened there that we've had police reports? Thank you.
Okay, consent agenda. There are 6 items on the consent agenda. Do any members of council request that any one of the items be removed and placed onto the regular agenda?
Yes, I would like to perhaps have a little bit further conversation about ordinance 3216, particularly with respect to the excess fund balance.
Okay, that item will be removed and placed onto the regular agenda. Any other items? I make a motion that we pass the remaining 5 items on the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Ann?
Ms. Saleh?
Yes.
Mr. Lecklider?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Reiner?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan? Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Okay, postpone legislation scheduled for ordinance 25-16. Ann?
Adopting the Crossroads Area Plan.
Dan?
Good evening. Good evening, members of council. As I stated to you in the memo that accompanied this, and as our public may remember, this was initially introduced as a first reading at council's June 27th meeting. The reason that we introduced it at that time frame and immediately postponed it was so that the public could have time, as you could have time to review the Crossroads Area Plan. Just by quick history, you know that this is a cooperative effort involving Union County, City of Marysville, Jerome Township, and the City of Dublin. We are recommending approval of the Crossroads Area Plan in its current form. Obviously, unless you have other changes you would like to offer or pending any input from the public here this evening. You know that this was managed by the Logan, Union County, and Champaign County Planning Commission. They had several public input processes. We intend to, or we are recommending that you pass this, as I said earlier. I put in the memo here that I believe Marysville City Council will pass this. At least that's what I've been told to this point. I believe Union County Commissioners are considering this tomorrow at their meeting, and it is likely to pass. At this point, we are not sure where it stands with Jerome Township. I think they continue to review it, but the 3 parties, Marysville, Union County, and Dublin, do believe that we should go ahead and pass that. And at a meeting of the US 33 Corridor Executive Group held on August 12th, everyone was informed that we were moving forward with this. So, and I would ask Councilmember Lecklider if he has anything that he would like to add to that based on that meeting or any involvement that he's had.
Just a couple things, thank you. First of all, you all may recall Jamie Green, who was the consultant that led this effort on behalf of the parties participating in the Crossroads Area Study. And he came to City Council, made a presentation, as you may recall. One of the important things to note, I believe, is the fact that this Crossroads Area Plan that you have before you tonight is generally consistent with Dublin's community plan, and the one exception being Jacqueline Farms, which, as we've discussed previously, is crosshatched out. And what you're being asked to approve this evening, doesn't include Jackman Farms, because the parties could not agree on a preferred land use for that property. And you also know that it's the subject of a current referendum effort. So having said that, the goals that are contained within this plan are what is important here, I believe, which I won't read all of them, but I think the most important ones are formalize a protocol for pre-development consultation. That's number one. Number two is to create a stronger coordinated development review process. Not surprisingly, improve transportation infrastructure, and also create stronger physical development standards. Dana, of course, is correct in pointing out that by all indications, Marysville and Union County are going to proceed to adopt this. It's also important to point out, I believe, that what this is, and this is not a contract. It's not unlike our community plan. It's to serve as a guide. But the jurisdictions, with one notable exception, that exception being, unfortunately, Jerome Township, have basically been abiding by these principles up to this point. But, we think that it's important, in large part, this isn't the sole reason, of course, but to give the world, if you will, our world, predictability, which is what we've been trying to achieve in large part through this process. So thank you for the opportunity to make comments. I did notice that we have a couple of residents from the affected area. I don't know if they'd like to speak or not. I just wanted to make sure that they had the opportunity, if they wanted to, given that they went to the trouble of being here this evening. All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim, for all the work that you did on this. Any questions or discussion with council? Ann?
Ms. Saleh?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
Mr. Lucklider?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Amorose Grooms?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Reiner?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Thank you.
Ordinance 27-16, Ann?
Authorizing the city manager to execute necessary settlement and conveyance documents to acquire a 0.206 acre more or less fee simple interest to 0.122 acre more or less permanent easement, 0.099 acre more or less permanent easement, and a 0.101 acre more or less temporary easement from Pewamo Limited for the property located along State Route 161 for construction and extension of Industrial Parkway for the Academic Drive Phase 1 project.
Thank you. Dana?
Jennifer Raylor's going to address
Jen.
this.
Good evening, council members. These property acquisitions are necessary for the project that was just noted by the clerk. The city and the property owner each had the property appraised, and the appraisers came to very different conclusions, as is noted in your cover memo. We explored settlement options, and a mediation was conducted. As a result of that mediation, a settlement of $227,000 and a future full movement access point at a mutually agreeable spot once the land develops is proposed. The law department recommends the proposed settlement and recommends approval of ordinance 2716, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Council questions? Hearing none. Ann?
Mr. Keenan? Yes. Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Amorose Grooms?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Reiner?
Yes.
Ms. Saleh?
Yes.
Mr. Lucklider?
Yes.
Ordinance 28-16, Ann?
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a pre-annexation agreement with Pulte Homes of Ohio LLC describing the intentions of the parties to annex certain real property located in Jerome Township.
Jennifer?
Good evening. This is legislation authorizing the city manager to enter into a pre-annexation agreement with Pulte for certain parcels on Highland Quarry Road. The key terms are outlined in the cover memo submitted with the ordinance. Council had some questions regarding the reparations payment calculations, and we provided estimates working with the developer and the finance department in the cover memo. As noted at first reading, this is just the first step in the annexation and rezoning process. If this agreement is approved, there will be multiple reviews by the Union County Commissioners, City Council, and the Dublin Planning and Zoning Commission. Representatives from Pulte are here tonight to answer any questions, and I'm happy to answer any questions as well We recommend approval of ordinance 28-16.
Does the applicant wish to be heard? Come on up. Good evening, welcome.
Good evening, thank you. My name is Matt Callahan, representing Pulte Homes, 4900 Tuttle Crossing Boulevard. I don't have anything additional to add this evening other than, as Law Director pointed out, this is a preliminary step or a first step in the process. And obviously, we'll be working through the normal planning and zoning process with Planning Commission, and obviously council will have the final say on any annexation and zoning. Beyond that, happy to answer any questions you might have this evening.
Council questions for either applicant or staff?
I just wanted to thank you for being responsive to my request about the expenses of the reparation payments that we'd have to make. I appreciate you guys stepping up and making sure that you covered those. Thank you.
Anything else? Ann?
Ms. Salee? Yes. Mr. Lechleiter?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan? Yes. Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Reiner?
Yes.
Thank you, Matt, for coming in. Appreciate it. Ordinance 29-16, Ann?
Adopting and enacting a supplement to the Code of Ordinances for the City of Dublin, Ohio.
Jen?
One more time. Ordinance 29-16 is a standard housekeeping measure. American Legal Publishing has prepared the current supplement to the Dublin Code, which contains all ordinances of a general and permanent nature approved through June 30th of 2016. Also included is applicable state legislation approved through April 6, 2016. I'm happy to answer any questions, and we recommend approval of ordinance 29-16.
Council questions? Hearing none. Ann?
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mr. Lechleiter?
Yes.
Ms. Salee?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Reiner?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
Ordinance 30-16.
Amending Section 153.059 of the City of Dublin Codified Ordinances, the zoning code to amend the Bridge District zoning regulations to add religious or public assembly as a conditional use, conditional size, limited use in the BSD office residential district.
Good evening, Claudia. How are you?
Good evening, I'm fine.
I'll
thank you
reduce
so
it.
much. Thank you. I have 3 slides if you want to indulge me. This was recommended for approval at the Planning and Zoning Commission on July the 7th, and the Planning and Zoning Commission also recommended approval of a conditional use for Vineyard Church for a specific tenant space, which would not be in effect until the ordinance is indeed approved. The office residential district within the Bridge Street district is essentially on the south side of 270. It's all east of Riverside Drive, and we were approached by the applicant Vineyard Church to move from Dublin Village Center to 3 tenant spaces within this office building existing today. And as we were doing our research, we figured out that for some reason in the office residential district within the Bridge Street district, churches, religious assembly, or public assembly uses were not permitted. And they are indeed permitted in all of the other Bridge Street district except for historic residential, which seems appropriate. But in terms of our research, we really couldn't figure out why this checkbox wasn't within this one particular district. So the applicant requested that the zoning code be amended for this district to also include this use in the size limitations as it is in all the other districts. And so with that, we are recommending approval of this change to the zoning code at the second reading.
Council have any questions?
Claudia, I do remember when we were writing this code, we talked about churches in these districts, and I remember Mr. Langworthy particularly was not supportive of church use in this district, and I think it was divided among the commissioners, but I think it's, you know, if we want urban, walkable, historic, all of those things, you know, religious institution uses are critical to the life of those communities, so I appreciate the fact that you brought it forward now.
Thank you.
Rectifying a wrong.
Okay, we'll have a second hearing at the September 12th council meeting. Thanks, Claudia.
Thank you.
Back to ordinance 32-16.
An ordinance authorizing the adoption of a general fund balance policy.
I'm assuming Angel, you will
Introduction.
be. I'll introduce it.
Yeah.
Good evening, members of council. As you are aware, on Wednesday, August 10th, staff brought forward a general fund balance policy. This was based on a discussion that we had during your March goal-setting session, in which we discussed utilization of the general fund. The policy that the administration has proposed articulates the city's practice of maintaining a general fund balance of no less than 50% of the general fund expenditures. But it did go a step further and say to the extent that our general fund balance exceeds 75%, we would propose transferring 25% of that excess of 75% to the capital improvements tax fund. Our recommendation was based on the fact that we believed that in the past, the general fund has transferred money into the capital fund. It traditionally transfers money into tax increment financing funds to advance capital projects. And because of the restrictive nature of capital improvements, we felt like that was the best use of those dollars to, as opposed to be spent on anything operational in nature, really be invested back into the community.
Chris?
I thank you for putting this policy together. I think it's important to have a policy, and I think that all of the language in the policy is very good. There is one exception that I have, and that's with respect to the excess fund balance. This policy would make it our policy to always transfer those excess funds to the capital improvement tax fund. And policies are very important, and they drive how we behave, and they drive the decisions that we make. I'm not certain that we want to set at this point in time the destination of those excess dollars. I would like us to have the conversation when those excess dollars are present to determine the course of action, or the course or the path that those excess dollars would take. I would liken this to, our family's home personal finances. At the end of the year, every year, we sit down and we have a discussion about whatever resources are left at the end of the year, and you go with the give some, save some, spend some kind of policy. And it's a collective decision that we make of, where are these remaining dollars going to go? And I think it's appropriate for this council to have the decision of, where will these remaining dollars go? What are compelling places that we might send them? Maybe we would send them to pay down debt. Maybe our operating fund might have some shortcomings, and we would need to do those. Maybe we would send it to the capital improvements fund. I just think that it's important that we have the conversation when those excess dollars are present, rather than predetermine today for the balance of the foreseeable future where those dollars would go apart from a conversation. So that being said, I would like us to change the really very small, only a few words of the whole policy of that, that the ultimate destination of the excess funds would be determined by council at the time.
The
Distribute those.
ultimate placement of the excess funds is always city council's purview. So, I see it as a placeholder, and I think our professionals in finance have told us where they'd like to see that placeholder put. And, I hear what you're saying, but we always have the opportunity to change it. So, when you're saying it's always going there, these excess funds, I'm not really understanding why this placeholder is causing heartburn, but that's just me.
Appreciate the perspective.
Angel, with the, I'm sorry, Chris, were you finished?
I was finished, yes. Thank you.
In your memo, you talked about how one of the reasons for this whole thing is for the rating agencies, and they want adopted policies as opposed to standard operating practices. Does loosening up that language change the goal of this? And so what are the pluses and the minuses of what Chris is suggesting?
Sure. Well, let me say this. I think that, first of all, having a stated policy is more than many entities have. So by us formally adopting the 50% reserve, we are leaps and bounds ahead of where other municipalities are. So I view the excess of the 75% to really be icing on the cake. I think that it's a good policy to show the public that, because there has been criticism, not a lot, but certainly that if you're sitting on a 90, 95, 100% general fund balance, why aren't you doing this, or why aren't you doing that? So I felt, along with our advisors, that by articulating language that does discuss how to handle that excess amount, it gives our population just some certainty to know that it will be used on capital investments, which was our recommendation. I think certainly if we were to strike this whole area, I don't think it minimizes the importance of this policy. I think it still accomplishes what we want it to accomplish from a rating agency perspective. We just thought that for just good business practices moving forward, it was something that we should take a look at, but there's certainly nothing that, forces us to address this.
Would it, and I guess, Chris, you would know better than I if this would, if instead of just saying the capital improvement tax fund, we added the language, or as to be determined by council, period.
Certainly, I would only
Just sort of- and I
add to
understand what
that.
Mike's saying, it's always, council can always decide that. That's the ultimate decision maker, no matter when it is or when it's decided.
Certainly. The only caveat to that is that we would need to make sure, depending on where that ultimate destination would be determined, that we're not breaking any other rules, for lack of a better phrase. For example, our general bond retirement fund is kind of a sacred place that you don't want to have a lot of activities in and out. There's a specified level of balance that really we shouldn't go above and beyond in there. And it's related to what your payments are or your interest levels in a given year. So we just need to make sure that wherever those conversations may lead, that we allow ourselves, if we need time to research more, to see what the best way to accomplish that is. So I might not have all those answers at that very point in time, not knowing where council might direct those funds. But we would just need to make sure that we're not doing anything that could cause problems down the road based on those decisions.
Well, that would be part of legislation that would have readings and so on and so
Certainly.
forth. So you would have ample time, I think, to determine where they go. I just know that why we do what we do is as important as what we do itself. And that when we set policy, we don't necessarily set the policy for ourselves, we set the policy for the people that follow us, because they don't have the opportunity to sit in on the original conversation and know why we were doing what we were doing. So that's, I would like us to see, to change just those 4 words, and that we don't have an absolute designation in our policy, but that the designation would be set by council.
Do you think adding some type of such language, hang on just a second, Tim, or otherwise directed by city council, does that accomplish the goal?
That would accomplish my goal.
Tim?
I would only like to add that I think language like that essentially says you have no policy. I think that the purpose of policy is saying that this is our intention of, or your intention of how you prefer it to be handled. And in the absence of specific guidance, which you always have the right to do every year, that's what would take place. I just would remind council that you always have the right, and it is your obligation, to look at this every time that we bring a budget forward and say, is this the right place for this to go? But I do believe in policy. I do believe that we have gone for a long time with some unwritten policy. And I think what we've heard loud and clear from our bond rating agencies and so forth, not that it was in any way scathing or was going to cost us anything in terms of our rating, but they strongly suggested pretty tighter language on, they love the way we practice, so what we're trying to do is put the way we practice into a policy. And I would just encourage council to really consider policy as guidance first, and then the exception to the rule is how you would then govern that later. So.
Dana, are you suggesting
my
that
perspective.
if we change the designation of where the money goes, the policy is somehow affected? I mean, the balance of the policy stays intact. It's really just the designation of the funds.
Yeah, my simple point is that if you're not designating it somewhere, then it's designated for nowhere. I understand that you're going to wrestle with that every year, but I think what they're looking for is some level of certainty as to where you would like to see that go. And you would govern this by exception as opposed to on an ad hoc basis every year. I mean, that's kind of my view of it. It's better to have it more set in stone and then manage it by exception, is how I view that, which is why I also approached Angel and asked that we take a look at this.
Well, I also think that there's the potential for, I totally hear what you're saying, but this is, so this isn't the total amount in excess of the 75%, right? It's just a portion of that amount in excess of 75%. And I completely feel where you're coming from. However, when I think about us trying to sit here and figure out every year or every 6 months or what have you where those monies should go, I can foresee some lengthy discussions that might otherwise just take a lot of time and perhaps maybe not get us as far as we'd like to go. However, what I would like to do is I would like to take a review, depending on how council feels about this, if this is passed, I'd like to take a review of this policy next year and see how this particular piece of language is working for us. We always have it within our right to change policy if we want to, particularly with new policy. I think it's really important to review them. I'd make the same suggestion with the debt policy as well.
Absolutely. You know, one of the concerns you have when you bring forward a new policy is, have you thought through every possible scenario that's not going to tie your hands in the future? We've tried to do that the best way we can. I looked at this going 5 or 6 years back to see what the impact would have been. But who's to say that we know what's going to happen in the next year, 2 years, 3 years? So I think that that's prudent for both policies. I would also add that the transfer of funds is always subject to appropriation by council, so I can't unilaterally just make a transfer without council appropriating these funds. So without a doubt, there would be a conversation at multiple points each year to discuss this.
And that's even to do the transfer to the capital improvement tax fund. I mean, council's got to transfer the money wherever it goes.
Correct.
This isn't like the automatic and we have to go in and act. We always have to act.
Correct.
Tim?
Thank you. Excuse me, I would prefer that our default position be that it go to capital investment. I think that's the conservative approach, and I think that's what our public would expect, quite frankly. You know, we're essentially, you know, you're reinvesting in your business, is what it amounts to. But there are so many other opportunities, you know, if unpredictable situations should arise, that we can do something else. I mean, if there was an emergency, if there was a recession or something like that, and we experienced a shortfall on the operational side, that we could, you know, divert the monies there. As you point out, Greg, you know, council has to act on this every year anyway, so.
I just don't want to put us in a position where we're going against our policy with regularity. You know, if we decide to put it somewhere else, we're going against our policy. And that's the space I'd like to see us avoid, that we have the conversation of where it's going to go. If we're going to have the conversation where it's going to go anyhow, why would we set ourselves up to go against our own policy?
I don't anticipate that we will. That's why I'm in favor of this policy.
Okay, you want to make a motion, Chris? Okay. Then we are,
May I just offer one last thing?
yeah.
Perhaps I could add, we had a statement, I believe in the debt policy, that addressed the waiver of the debt policy, and it says the city may deviate from the requirements if it's in the best interest of the city to do so. So that would almost force a conversation and document through some sort of process why we would deviate against this, so that if council were to make a decision to put it somewhere opposite of what the policy stated, at least we've acknowledged that there might be an occurrence where that might happen, and we would document it and have it approved with that notation in it. So
I would
that-
appreciate
And
that
that's in
sort
the
of,
companion legislation, the other one
Right.
that we did?
Right.
I would appreciate something like that, because what I don't want to do is adopt a policy and that we would frequently, maybe not, that we would go against our policies. Our policies should be such that they're the guiding force, that that's what we do.
Right.
And I would really like to have a safety valve, or a check valve, if you will, of
Absolutely.
good reasons to deviate from the policy.
Right, and so to Christina's point, I think that's also part of the review. If you're finding that we are having to deviate from it year after year after year, that does force us to say, did we do something wrong, or is it time to tweak this a little bit?
Yeah,
So I will include this waiver language in this policy for the second reading.
Yeah, because it also implies some level of justification has to happen to make that waiver occur. And that would make me feel much more comfortable on both sides of that argument. Yeah.
Do we need to do anything, first, do we need to do anything to this? And does council have any problem with the language that's in the debt policy being reflected also in the excess fund policy? Everybody okay with that? Get you closer.
As long as Angel's good with it, I'm fine. I think we were fine before, but that's neither here nor there.
Okay, so you'll change that, and then that'll come back to us
We'll have
at
an
the
amended ordinance at the second reading.
September 12th council meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Staff comments, Dan?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple comments. You received a follow-up memo from us on Friday after your packet went out regarding ordinance 2616 and the capital improvements program. I believe we answered the questions that were left hanging out there from that meeting, your workshop last week. I want to thank the staff for the quick turnaround on that. Obviously, if you have other questions, let us know, or if we missed something, and we'll get that into your next packet. We also have, just want to point out that Clarion and Associates will be here for their input session relative to overlay zoning districts in the historic Dublin, and there was a memo in here about that, and that's going to be on August 24th at 11 a.m. And as I've said before, if that doesn't fit your schedule, let the planning division know, and we'll certainly do what we need to do to accommodate your schedule. Central Ohio Transit Authority has their regional luncheon this week on the 25th. And then just a quick mention that O'Brien Atkins will be in town on September 6th, the evening of September 6th, to discuss the West Innovation District, and that will be relooking West Innovation District as planned out there. Not a lot of deviation out there, but I think some pretty exciting more detail as a result of OU's master plan coming about and some of the interesting work that's going on out there. We'll get you more information on location and time and so forth, but if you'll look for that over the next week. And that's all I have, barring any questions you may have. Thank you.
When's the CIP come back, Dana?
I'm sorry?
When does the CIP come back? Is that the next?
It comes
meeting?
back your next
September
meeting.
12th?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Committee reports. John, the Beautify Your Neighborhood grant.
The Community Development Committee met this evening, and we had two applications. One was from Lowell Trace. It was for $1,279, and they discovered a problem with their sign that they need to redo the foundation on. We approved that. Willow Grove came in. They are doing a $13,000 improvement to their neighborhood entries. They want to coordinate all the different entries into one landscape. They requested $5,000. They're going to come up with the other $8,000 themselves. And the committee has suggested that council approve both of these. Is there a recommendation for approval?
Second.
Ann?
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Ms. Salee?
Yes.
Mr. Lechleiter?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Reiner?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
Thank you.
P&Z, Amy?
Nothing really to report, thanks.
Administrative Committee, Mike?
Nothing for administrative?
And you just did your community development.
We're done.
Yeah, is that it?
Yep.
Finance Committee, Mike?
Just that we have the second reading for the CIP. Any other questions to come before the good of the cause needs to happen before then?
Public Services, Amy?
We don't have anything, thank you.
Warpsy, Tim?
Nothing?
Here we go again. Logan Union Champaign Regional Planning Commission.
Nothing?
You're going to say something one of these days. US 33, I think we've probably covered all that.
I think we have.
Okay.
Thank you.
John, Dublin Arts Council.
Just a reminder to everyone to get out and support the Bread Festival coming up. It's going to be a great thing, very unique, and they are bringing in one of the great sculptors of, there's 3 great bread sculptors in the world, and one of them is coming here to Dublin. So try to make it,
When is that, if someone wanted to
I
be
think it's going to be in mid-October.
October 15th.
More details.
Yeah, be back with you later.
What's on here?
It's October 15th, I think.
Bread Festival, it's the 15th of October. From 12 to 10. Board of Education, Chris and Christina?
We will have our first meeting of this coming year, academic year this Wednesday, so we'll have something for next meeting.
Washington Township, you already heard from them earlier this evening. Dublin Friendship Association, Christina.
We had our very first meeting, and we have some follow-up that Nancy's going to be providing us some documentation that we've asked her for. And we have a couple of plans in the works. And Sarah Ott so very graciously volunteered to chair that committee by virtue of the fact that she was late and the last person in the room. So thank you very much.
That'll teach you.
For your kindness. But I'm very excited about this new group of folks coming together and looking into some potential opportunities for additional friendship cities, but not just for the sake of having friendship cities. Looking at cities that have the potential to really match up well with us, and having friendships that we can truly sustain through time, because that's what's really important about it. We have had a wonderful opportunity to spend some time with with folks from Moshiko, and they were just absolutely delightful, and so I'm very excited about the prospect of working with some additional cities from potentially around the world.
Okay, thank you. Council Roundtable, Chris?
Thank you. There were a lot of great items of information in our informational-only packet. I would like to highlight something from two of them. One was the memo regarding the overlay district in historic Dublin, and I appreciate that August 24th at 11 there'll be a meeting. I have some concerns about how the recommendation is that we don't pursue an overlay district, but rather we try to address it with the code. I think that addressing the needs of the historic district, particularly south of 161, would be very difficult to govern with a code modification if we do not define geographic boundaries of an area. Certainly, I think it is appropriate that we apply some different thoughts to south of 161 as we do north of 161. And I would really like to see us pursue more robustly an overlay district that would really define the area. We see that the overlay districts in the memo did a great job of telling us about some of the City of Columbus's overlay district, and I can appreciate that it adds a level of complexity, but at the same time, I think it's worth it.
I had pulled this off as well to talk about, and I agree with you. I'm not sure how we get there, whether it's an overlay district or amendments, but clearly there's a lot of things that are different in that south end than we have up in the north end and across the river. So whatever we do, I think we have some unintended consequences that may be occurring down there, and I'd like to, I think it's a really important piece. I don't think it should be delayed for months on end. I think at least for me, it's very urgent, not only to myself, I think some of my fellow council members, but also to many of those people in the historic district. So I would urge staff to put this at a high priority. That's my feeling anyway.
I'd be curious if Don or Vince or Dana could speak to the idea of an overlay district versus the code changes, because what I heard in the meeting I attended was that staff definitely heard the need for something to protect those areas. We have a number of our historic home or historic structures there, and it felt like what they were suggesting was more protective and more effective than an overlay district, and how an overlay district would work versus how a code amendment could work. So I'm interested in that perspective. I think we all share our concern for the historic district, and particularly south, as you state, Mike, and as Chris said, it's different. It's a different part of the community, it's a different part of the historic district. So if you could maybe respond to that and how you see what you're suggesting working better than an overlay district, because I think it's important to all of us. It's just sort of how we get where we're going.
I just want to kick off by saying that we all have the same goal in mind. There's no doubt about that. It's about how you get there. And so, I mean, that's what we're all working towards. I really had deferred to Vince, and I think he had to leave early, but Donna hopefully can pick that up about the intricacies of why. I think he kind of laid that out in the memo, but anything to add to that, Donna, or we can even report more later.
Sure, yeah, and we do intend to report more later. I'd first like to say that we do have a consultant already under contract that will be looking at this. And really the purpose of the overlay district and versus what the code amendments could do is something that we want to analyze. I wouldn't want us to be hasty in assuming that the overlay district was actually going to solve all the problems. That's what the consultant will help us to determine, whether we can modify and make those changes through the code, or whether an overlay district is really something necessary that we need to do. Adding that extra layer may not actually help us in the end to achieve the goals that we want.
So I think what would be really helpful, at least for me anyway, I'm not going to speak for the rest of council, it would be just a little bit of some compare and contrast with the different options and sort of what the pros and cons are of each, so that we can make a really good educated decision on what direction to head.
Certainly.
That'd be
I
helpful.
think that folks heard the term overlay district and jumped into that and using that as a catchphrase to maybe not really understand all the implications of that. So that was why we didn't make
And I just want to emphasize, that's really the purpose of the consultant and their role in this, is to look at those two. As far as expediting, we'll work as quickly as we can, but we want to make sure we're thorough. So it's a combination.
Does the consultant have any time frame as far as deliverables?
We're expecting later this fall, probably by the end of October, we'll have at least some preliminary recommendations.
When we work with that consultant, I want to make sure that we have the ability to define boundaries. So unless we set up, we have different different schedules, different nomenclature for the different areas. And, if it's not an overlay district, then maybe we need to add an additional classification. But the one thing I want to make certain that we accomplish is that we have boundaries to this specific district, this specific portion of the district,
So
if that makes sense.
So can you clarify, do you mean the physical boundary of the historic area? Is that what you mean specifically?
Physical boundaries south of 161.
Okay.
That we're,
Yeah, the specific area in discussion.
we're
Okay,
really
thank
trying
you.
to protect.
Yep, thank you for
That the scale is important, that the theme and the rhythm and the repetition is critical for the continuity of that portion of our city. Thank you.
I guess I don't disagree with any of that. I guess I haven't heard council have a complete discussion about what exactly are our goals. We've had some correspondence from residents, and they have things that they wish to see. I haven't heard much. I've heard from a couple of the property owners, and there's kind of a mixed response. There are a number of historic structures there. We're kind of getting down to, those are, that's the heart of the historic properties that are left in our community there. And so assume the goal is to save those structures. Well, then to what lengths are we ready to go to save those structures? And I don't know that council, I don't feel like we've had an agreement on, what is it that we're trying to achieve in that area, or, we've talked about the Bridge Street District, and we've, at length, we've talked about how important the historic district is, but we haven't talked about that area in particular, and what are our goals based on, what are the goals of the landowners in the area. We haven't had a formal, and I've heard this as a criticism, the city hasn't had a formal meeting, input session, if you will, to hear from all those folks. There's been a lot of informal things over the years where people could weigh in, or they could weigh in as part of the larger Bridge Street District discussion, and that wasn't a real effective way, I think, in a lot of their eyes, to get their point across, because it's like, we're focusing on this huge Bridge Street District, and we're a small, quaint part. So I don't know how we get to where we're going, and I don't know what you think about in terms of the direction that you're going to take, but it seems like council should have the ability to weigh in on our goals.
Is the consultant working with the,
Can I add a
work
little
with the residents?
historical perspective on that? So when Donna and I held our first meeting, and really Donna's first meeting, and bringing together all the historic Dublin associated interests a few months ago. We had a very good dialogue. Those continue. The terminology of overlay district was put out at that meeting. You know, no judgment on whether that's the right or wrong thing to do, but it was put out in that meeting. Staff responded to that and said, and we heard later from council members as well, look at an overlay district. At the same time, we had already committed to doing a code review, which has been, you know, in process and in dialogue of doing for historic Dublin for quite some time. So those two are kind of coming together in the sense that we were going to have a consultant to do the review of the Bridge Street District code and those issues that were a part of that. And then in that process we said, let's look at this overlay district concept as part of that. So this is a process. I don't think it should be really a rush to crush one. I think that this all needs to come together and gel together in both the Bridge Street District Code, as well as how does that overlay district work as part of that, or should it be separate from that? And that's what this process is supposed to do relative to this consultant's involvement. I mean, if council feels that overlay district is the way to go, and that's what you want, then we'll separate that out, we'll pursue overlay district, and that's what we'll do. But I think that what your planning staff is telling you is they're not even sure yet whether that's the best way to go, but they also feel it could substantially be addressed through addressing the Bridge Street District Code. So I can separate those two out, we can go down two different lanes, but that's not what my planning director is recommending. So I would ask for maybe, let us get into a couple meetings with this consultant. We'll put a priority on that that comparison. We'll report back to you on that once this consultant's in town and go from there. Does that sound like a reasonable approach?
It does. Is this something that we could take up as you get a little bit more information at a council work session?
Yeah, we could give you an update, I think, on that and check in on these goals, and we'll try to frame those up a little bit better for you as part of that process and give you some suggestions.
Yeah, and I would add.
Like I said, we're all trying to do the same thing. It's how we get there.
Yeah, and I would add, at that meeting, Rick Gerber, who's now a property owner in the historic district and has his business down there, said, you know, for lack of a better term, what do you think about an overlay district? And it was, you know, very much couched, hey, I don't know what to call this thing, but we have these things that we want to accomplish, for lack of a better term, or his exact words. So I think we need to not get hung up on the term, but rather what the end result is. And so I appreciate.
That's where I was trying to get to. You did that very succinctly.
Yeah, and I appreciate staff's approach. I think that, but I agree with Christina, we do need to get into a work session. I think that would be really helpful.
Will do.
Okay.
Okay, the only other thing I had was, Angel, thank you for the update on the CIP. Some questions were answered. Are we going to get any more, or is this it? I think there were maybe some items that questions came up in our CIP work session that didn't get captured in this memo. Is there more coming, or is this it?
I think we were under the impression that we had answered all the questions that were asked at the CIP workshop. We had, Dana and I both took notes, as well as some others, and I think at the end of the meeting, we confirmed those outstanding follow-up issues with Councilmember Keenan. So certainly if there are questions that still remain, we'd be more than happy to answer those and provide additional follow-up.
I may send you an email with some additional questions. Maybe you could have a part 2 of the memo and respond to those for our next packet. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Chris. Christina?
I just have one really tiny little thing. So in this brochure, the utility extension program site visit, where's Mike? He's not on here.
Who did that?
Sandra.
Megan. Thanks for pointing that out. I'm gonna blame Megan for that.
I know I'm on my way out, but that was quick.
That's a little harsh.
Whoa.
Can we put him back in?
I absolve all responsibility with that.
Take it or leave it.
Wow.
My fault. I'll look at it.
So do we get to skip and watch this? Amy? Go ahead, Mike. What do you got?
Oh, it's tough. I have nothing. Thank
All
you.
right, Amy?
I wanted to follow up on the citizen comments about the roundabout. I am curious about the accident reports, but I'd also be interested in sort of our engineers doing an, brief analysis of, do we need more signage? Is more signage the answer? We've heard a suggestion about rumble strips. I don't, know that that's the direction that we would choose to go, but it certainly speaks to, how do we always talk about designing roadways for safety, and if in fact we are having traffic entering the roundabout too quickly, I don't know the answer to that. That was a suggestion. It seems like plausible that's given the speeds of the roadways, and we've been talking about traffic calming. So I just wanted to make sure that we didn't lose the roundabout discussion, and that, perhaps we could get a follow-up from.
Yeah, not at all. I took
engineer.
copious notes. I appreciate the comments and information on that. We'll certainly look into that.
Yeah, just to follow up, I want to just back that up a little bit too. So I talked with a colleague of mine who's a Hilliard City Council member, and his comment was very, very much the same as the citizens' comment, that the signage is too close to the roundabout, that you need more time to really register and think about, okay, which lane should I be in? He said, look, it's a beautiful roundabout. We all know the benefits of roundabouts. Hilliard's put in roundabouts as well. His comment was very similar, that there's just not enough time, given where the signs are located right now, to figure out what you're supposed to do and where you're supposed to go, even for folks who are accustomed to driving roundabouts. So maybe sign placement is something we do, but you're right, I don't want to let that go. I want to make sure we take a look at it and
Right.
see how we can improve it.
We don't pick that out, though. That's a state highway. There's rules that you have to follow.
They're temporary, too. The signs that are there are temporary. So, we
Yeah.
just need to make sure that when we put them in, we get them in the right spot, and if, there needs to be enforcement out there or whatever. I mean, I know it's the 20-mile-an-hour entrance speed is a suggested speed. It's not necessarily a speed limit, but go ahead.
If I could just add to that, my comments, or whether they were a rant, I think at the most recent meeting, with respect to roundabouts, not just this one, it was actually about the rest of the roundabouts in town, where, I think maybe we might need to engage in more education, just generally speaking. I mean, it just strikes me, you'll remember, it just strikes me that people approach roundabouts as though it's a contest to see how quickly you can get through them. I mean, if it was more of, you have to approach these with caution. I mean, that needs to be, the primary means of how you approach these, rather than how quickly can I get from this side of the roundabout to that side of the roundabout. Anyway, enough of that.
Amy, anything else?
No, thanks.
Thank you. Tim?
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge something that is in our items of interest. This is with respect to the West Bridge Street Corridor Framework Plan Status Report, and I appreciate staff in the Phase 2 design. What caught my eye and what I appreciate with respect to West Bridge Street is the streetscape conceptual design for West Bridge Street will address traffic calming, walkability, on-street parking, and biking. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. John?
Yeah, heads up on the 16th of September. I think Vince has got an interesting thing going on here. I'm familiar with this, and it looks like a whole bunch of young planners and architects got involved in this. And there's always a lot to learn from this, so I'm really looking forward to it. It sounds like the staff's engaged in this Park Day exercise for green space. I think they ferret out some really interesting ideas. I think that's good for the community, so it'll be interesting to see what they come up with.
I went to a seminar in that when I went to Phoenix to the APA, and it was fascinating. I was like, wow, that would be cool. I wish we could do something like that in Dublin. And
Yeah, it's exciting to see that we're doing that.
all I had to do was think.
Kudos to the staff for coming
Yeah.
up with it. Thanks.
Is that it?
That's it.
Just a couple of quick things. Got a real nice note from Ed, the honorary chair of the Irish Festival. I'd like to thank you in the city of Dublin for hosting such a wonderful Irish festival. It was an honor to represent and enjoy all things Irish. As the honorary chair with my family, we made many long-lasting memories with friends, which we will cherish always. So he did a wonderful job in that role, and I appreciate that he sent us that note. We swore in with Chris was there, the Chamber of Commerce new board of directors. Dana was there. So we're sending them off in good hands. And then Dana and I attended I can't believe they call this the Big 30 Mayors.
Actually, they changed it, the Mayor's Alliance.
There it is. That's a little, maybe more appropriate. The Mayor's Alliance meeting last Friday, really interesting that the 30, I'd say probably 2/3 of them were there.
Yes, they had a very good turnout.
Pretty good turnout and really interesting issues. I was sitting next to the mayor from Cleveland Heights, and the issues that she's dealing with are just completely different than the issues we're dealing with. So it's going to be interesting to see how this group sort of comes together and finds common goals that are the same throughout the entire state. And tomorrow, Wendy's is hosting the top 20 managers from across the United States that I will be going to. So if anybody wants to join me, that should be fun.
One thing I forgot, I had the pleasure of cutting the ribbon for the pizza fireplace. If you haven't had a chance to, it is really a fantastic location, and they had invited me to do the ribbon cutting in Greg's absence. So they were wonderful folks and really good stuff. So if you have the opportunity.
And that is over by the Giant Eagle on
It's in the
front.
Giant Eagle Center. It's in, it's where the Dairy Queen once stood. So it's very good.
Oh, okay, right there, okay. So I guess with that, we will stand adjourned.